Passionate about sustainability, energy, and climate? You're in the right place. Welcome to Energetic. I'm Maureen Cornelis, and together we will engage with people who dedicate their lives to climate justice and making a just energy transition happen. They may be activists, scientists, policymakers, or other enthusiasts, just like you. Let their life stories and insights inspire you to build a better future for people and the planet. Let's meet Thomas Samuel, whose ambition is to be a ray of sunshine in the energy sector. For over 15 years, his mission has been clear: to provide universal access to clean energy. An engineer at heart, Thomas founded Sunna Design in 2011, transforming it into a global leader in smart solar lighting, with over 100,000 products illuminating 100 million lives across 50 countries. But in 2019, he decided to change course a little bit, and he launched Moon, a social enterprise bringing energy autonomy to remote African communities. But now he's turning his sight back to France, working to solarize his home region, Nouvelle-Aquitaine, one project at a time. Thomas, welcome to Energetic.
Hello, thank you, Marianne.
What brought you to the solar sector? Because you started back in 2011, where it was quite a niche topic, a niche issue. What brought you to first launch Sunna Design with the success it had? And what sparked you at the time?
Long story short, but actually it's surfing that brought me to Africa. After my engineer school, I decided to travel all the way down to Senegal by car, surfing every single wave on the journey. And I arrived in just before Christmas 2004 in a tiny village in Casamance, in the south of Senegal, where I bought a sailboat and that I equipped with a solar panel. And with this boat, I traveled for almost 2 years, and at the end crossed the Atlantic and did a very nice journey, also for good surfing and very good traveling. But all that powered with one single small solar panel, when I happened to discover that it was really working perfectly. And from there, I continued, I can continue the story, but I happened from this trip to Brazil. I sold the boat and then traveled to East Asia, where I had a personal interest in all the infrastructure had been reconstructed after the tsunami. So I saw why and how solar was used in Indonesia, in Andaman Islands, and then in Sri Lanka. And I finished that journey in India, where I decided to deepen my knowledge in solar energy, partnering and volunteering for an NGO working in the southeast of India, in Auroville, precisely. And one of the rural electrification guru was acting as the CEO of the business unit that was doing electrification project in Auroville, where asked me to design an improved solar street light because he had won a public tender and he had some products that he was not satisfied. And the whole thing started there. I created a company, designed the first integrated solar street light. At the time, it was very innovative. And back in 2011, I came back to France for strengthening the technology. We partnered with CEA and a battery manufacturer in France. And we designed what is today the best solar street light in the world.
That's incredible. It sounds one of those novels from the 18th century where people discovered the world at the time. Usually there were men, only a few women, but that's great that people are still managing to do this kind of things and then realize how different the situation is and trying to, let's say, spread best practice from one place to another. But what you also did was really to try to maybe really open eyes, try to bring one good solution to another place and really make sure that the solution were actually fitted to the needs and were improved, right? Because when you started Sunna Design back in 2011, there were many products were still in their infancy. They were, now we have done a lot of improvements, but at the time they really needed some improvements. So how did you make that happen? Also, because maybe there weren't so many people working on it. And how did you involve the population really to make sure that it's, as you said, the best solar solutions for street lighting?
Good question. At the time, I was very inspired by Ravi Najju, a thinker that has mainstream frugal innovation, like Jugad innovation, System D in French, which was really like taking the need of the people and trying to make a product or a solution as lean, as cheap, as efficient, and as, I don't know how to say that in English, but how to spread it as much as possible for meeting the needs of the billions of people that live in poverty. At that time in India, there were almost half of the population was living off grid. It is unfortunately still the case in Africa. India has improved a lot, but taking to those like design principle, we happened to make a product that was really industrialized, as cheap as possible and as easy to install worldwide in the most difficult conditions. Solar street lighting is very useful in the case of no electrification, of course. There are dozens and dozens of villages all around the world that have no yet electricity. It is as well very interesting for urgency situation. And the very first project we did with Sunna Design, the big project, was to light up a refugee camp in Jordan, the Zaatari refugee camp, which was unfortunately at the time being constructed because of the situation at the time.
That's really like incredibly inspiring, right? So the idea that you really to take things really from nothing to something that provides life and hope to many people, but also safety, right? Because street lighting, it has such a huge gender dimension. It has such a huge social impact. Is it the reason why you decided to focus first on street lighting and then on maybe household solutions?
I was very passionate about solutions for rural electrification because in my sailing journey and surfing adventure, I met the most beautiful people and communities living out of grid in the most remote places of the world. So they were unfortunately mostly living off grid, and that is not good. It's not something that we can accept today in the 21st century, where technology and financing are widely available for this kind of project. Why solar street light at first? It was really the meaning that electrification guru that really helped me to step in to get a real project and to design a solution that was really meeting a first need. You mentioned very well the impact of solar street lighting in terms of course, social activities, but that was economical activities. Because obviously all those places where the sun sets at 6 p.m., there is no life, there is then no business and a lack of economic development that can be helped with public light. And
it's very linked to education, for instance. You really can't have, let's say, classes after dark because of safety reasons, because there is no way you will be able to go back home if all the streets are completely dark and you are, as a woman, for instance, at risk of being kidnapped or getting hurt or even encounter like wild animals, right? So it's really a question of making sure that your life is is safer at many different levels. I see you laugh when I say wild animals, but yeah, let's be honest. Women still in 2024 would prefer to be alone in a forest with the bear than with the man. Maybe it's about also fellow human beings, right?
No, and I'm laughing because I had so many crazy stories about people like chanting our solar street light because we were riding the risk of walking on a snake or walking on a cow. I have a crazy témoignage from a lady that fell on a cow during the night when she wanted to go for the restroom. So yeah, funny. And of course, wild animals, but as well men, of course, and that was specifically the case in refugee camp with, of course, all the sanitarization aspects needed to be lit.
Yes, there are also data showing that many times women and girls don't go to the bathroom at night, even if they need so, because of the lack of lighting that would enable them to get there. So it's really one of those, let's say, most pressing issues. But one of the questions that often come really when we talk about electrification, and we just had a conversation just before we released this episode. The previous one was with William Brent about the quality of the electricity. when you think of street lighting, is it like a way to say, okay, we are putting everybody on a kind of level playing field? Does it count as electricity access in a way? Or how does that work?
Okay, very good question. In my opinion, that may differ from some others, it's really part of a pre-electrification solution. Bringing proper electricity, meaning kilowatt hour, is what everyone should deserve and get. But it's unfortunately not easy to bring electricity to remote communities, and it's extremely expensive. So our advocacy, and this is now encompass Moon as well, which is bringing solar streetlight and solar systems as a pre-electrification solution, because it is something that can be done very quick at very big scale before the grid arrive. And William, that you quoted, as is very right, from some like large communities and places where there is already economical activities, mini grids is a very appropriate electrification solution. In our opinion, there is a lot to do for maybe half of the off-grid population that will not be connected to any grid or mini grid in the next 10 years, and that still need light and pre-electrification solution. And we are convinced, because we have done that at a pretty large scale already, that the combination of solar streetlights and solar system is a very good first level of energy access.
So how does Sunna Design and Moon differ?
Sunna Design is a solar streetlight manufacturer. We have a factory in Bordeaux, and we export all over the world. Africa is of course a very big market for us, but we also have a subsidiary in the US, and we export in Middle East, all over, because there is a need for solar street lighting all over in very different use cases.
So it's like more compact street light that could be installed on a pole or something. How does it?
It's a very the street light designed by Sunna, and the first innovation was to do a compact product with one solar, one structure, one battery, one LED light, and that you put that and plug and play on a pole. Okay. Switch on the line, and it gives the lighting for 15 years without blackout, which is an amazing technical solution, and that is, of course, bringing only public lighting. And coming back to my original true passion, which is rural electrification, we wanted to do more. And this is why we created within Sunna and incubated within Sunna Moon, that is a solar system company that is now providing, or maybe 100,000 people daily, indoor lighting. And this solution, and just for coming back to my surfing story at the beginning, where I bought my sailboat, this village in the south of Senegal was off-grid. And when we started with Sunna Design to have some success and some media recognition, we got France 24 and other Pan-African TV channels. And a girl from the village managed to find my number and call me and say, hey, you forgot us. We are still in the dark. You are doing great things in Mali. We heard that on TV, but what about us? And I was not satisfied coming back to that village only with solar streetlight, because I knew that the need was larger and the houses needed to be lit. And we then created Moon. And back in 2017, we completely pre-electrified that village with indoor lighting and public lighting.
Wow, that's really super impressive. And I suppose that you are still working on scaling up this kind of solutions, but you've also decided to start your business in Europe, in particular in the southwest of France. Now I need to make a disclaimer to our listeners today. Actually, Thomas and I, we have never met, but we happen to have a lot of connections. And I know very well the area he lives and he develops his service. Because I'm from there. I'm based in Italy, in northern Italy. Many people believe I'm in Brussels, but I haven't been in Brussels for quite some time. But actually, Thomas is in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, so the area of Bordeaux, which is my hometown. So I'm really super happy to hear about innovations coming from my place of origin. Anyway, Thomas, you decided to literally bring electricity home. And you've been saying that really the solar shouldn't be the energy of tomorrow, but really of today. Right?
Definitely. This is why, so there's two very big use cases for solar. And what I first discovered is the use case of rural electrification and the people that have no power. And solar is definitely the best, cheapest widely acceptable and technology for bringing a first level of electrification. We did that with Moon at pretty large scale, and COVID happened, and we were in like big deployments in Togo and Senegal, lighting up at the time already maybe 1,000 houses per month, which was already at significant scale. And COVID arrived, the world was shut down, and I had some time for the thinking. And me being and living in France, I say, okay, what should we do to either like strengthen Moon and broaden our impact? I was very influenced at that time by the fact that some companies were aiming to be carbon neutral, which was obviously a very important goal for any organization. And even if we have a huge social impact with Moon, pre-electrifying households, we still have a carbon impact because we manufacture goods that are installed, even though we operate and recycle and blah, blah, it has an impact. So we said, how can we reduce our overall carbon impact? And that was only in reducing the consumption of people that were consuming too much. There are a lot all over the world, and there are a lot, of course, all around us back home in France. So we decided to start an activity here for installing solar panels for households, same, but instead of providing electricity that they didn't have, it's just for saving and reducing their consumption and then their emission.
That's really cool because I think it's many of us, we tend to forget that there are maybe more similarities between continents than differences, right? That we, at the end of the day, as human beings, what we want is this feeling of safety, the feeling of comfort, and most of it is provided through quality electricity. It's through electricity in general. It's really the light that makes our lives better. And there is this question of affordability and, of course, of making a difference at many different levels. So I was wondering, are there any difference in the way people in France versus people in Senegal or Togo will actually react to the solution that you develop? Because really I'm passionate about building trust, about consumer protection, about consumer environment. Are there some lessons or things that you have been through in Africa that you have been able to export or bring back home in a way?
My first thoughts are like pride and a feeling of being actor of the solution. Especially here in France, where people, of course, they want to save euros because electricity prices are rising and blah, blah, blah. But maybe the very first people that are going solar is to take part of a global movement where they feel that they have an impact and they participate to the solution. And we try to push that button rather than just saying that you buy something for consuming more and cheaper, which is a nonsense. It is exactly what I dislike in the renewable energy world in general, is because you produce greener that you can consume better or more. That's a nonsense. We are in the need of global reduction of consumption. And solar in France, as we do it, because we educate a lot of clients on how to optimize and reduce their consumption. And adding solar is just a component of frugality, which is very much needed in half of the world that consumes too much.
Yeah. It's the idea of contributing to sufficiency principles, which is really going beyond energy efficiency, but using much better the assets we already have and making sure that we don't waste. It's not because we have like abundant electricity that we need to waste it in a way, and that it has to come with the energy efficiency and so on. That's really interesting what you say, because at many different levels have been like the developing business or services that are extremely timely, given the framework, given also the, let's say, European framework, which is all about boosting our autonomy, boosting our consumption, like the production of resources on site and so on. But from what I understand, you also have this originality of producing your solar panels, right?
Actually, not for the solar panels themselves. With Sunna Design, we designed a factory that is extremely innovative in many ways, and that manufactures overall systems, which a solar streetlight is a system. But actually, for the solar panel themselves, we don't manufacture them, and we source from very like top level manufacturers and Chinese, which is not something that we can market, but obviously they are the best and cheapest product available at the moment. They are nice, large scale industrial projects in France. We're hoping this develops, but at the moment, honestly, because we are giving 25-year warranty on our installations in France, and we need to rely on very stable manufacturers. Some manufacturers are in China are AAA rated, so basically they are stronger than some states. Their marketing activity. And this is what we want. Actually, and we are not fighters for any made in France or made in blah, blah. We want that available technologies that are massively manufactured are massively installed, basically. It is a need today that the energy transition takes place and that every single home gets equipped with solar panel, wherever they come from. And if we are capable of creating a big enough domestic market, of course, manufacturing will make sense. But at the moment, it's not yet the case. And unfortunately, in France, only 5 to 10% of the households are equipped with solar panel, while in Netherlands, for example, it's more than 50%. So there is a huge need for scale because the climate and the global world cannot wait for us to think if it's better to wait for French-made panels, for example.
Yeah, that's a very relevant point. And that's where your vision and your idealism confronts with reality and makes a very pragmatic solution to it. And I think we need some pragmatic dreamers like you to make things advance. So that's quite an interesting point that you just made. And I've also seen that, for instance, in Australia, about 30% of the total electricity demand come from solar panels, which is also something quite impressive. And in France, maybe we are not there yet, also because of the importance of nuclear assets and so on. So I don't know, and maybe that's for another time. So what is really interesting is that you mentioned the need to scale the installation, but that doesn't happen without workers, people who are actually able to perform the job of installing. And from the reports I've read, it's really one of the biggest problems. So how do you overcome this challenge? How do you make sure that you have really trained people to install the solutions you developed? What has been your recipe?
Yeah. The recipe, I don't know yet, because we have not yet scaled in France. We started earlier this year. We've done a couple of dozens of installations, and we are really at pre-industrial scale here. But our learnings in Africa will be key to design and manage large-scale installation team. In Africa, we have already 100 people that are capable of installing more than 1,000 homes per month. And all the DG training, digital follow-up, and all the IT that we have developed to track and improve all the processes will be very key in onboarding, training, and securing good quality installation for end users. And I believe that it will be a challenge in France, but many people want to work in this kind of industry and for nice companies. So I'm not really worried that to find a qualified or to be qualified workforce that will help us to scale our business here.
That's great. And I guess that if somebody wants to work with you, they should just drop your CV, and you're always on the lookout for people to know how to install solar panels. Are you planning on developing elsewhere in France, or are you concentrating on the area of Bordeaux?
We, as the first team that started this activity in France, wants to really concentrate in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, which is our wider region. But all the learnings that we will be doing here for the next months and years shall be replicated in other regions with other teams. And we will be, at some point, looking at creating local agencies elsewhere in France with local teams that will be able to serve locally, perfectly, the people that wants to turn to solar.
And I think it's really interesting that you are starting by this region in particular. And it's not because I'm from there, but it's also because at the moment it's facing, let's say, a lot of challenges because of climate change. It's one of the less constructed areas of France. It has a lot of forests. And there are some projects that are aiming to get rid of some forests to build large-scale solar farms. And your solution, if I understand correctly, is like totally the opposite of building large-scale solar farms, right?
2 points here. Our solution definitely is installing the least possible solar panel on an optimized home. And this is really virtuous, I believe, because consuming less and adding a solar part of your energy mix is very good. At the opposite, solar farms or wind farms is just about selling the most possible electricity to the grid with some purchase agreement with any corporate or government or EDF in France. Unfortunately, this doesn't lead to any efficiency. It's just producing cheaper and renewable energy and doesn't really push any citizen or factory or industry to reduce their consumption. Coming back to your point about cutting forests and putting large solar farms, I have a mixed solution on this because, of course, it's not good at all to reduce non-constructed area in many ways. Unfortunately, our forests back home, if you know that region very well, are not really forest. It's champs. En fait, c'est des champs de pin. C'est de l'agriculture productiviste.
So it's like productive
pine agriculture.
Productive pine agriculture. So it serves as a rationale to cut those trees to plant solar panels instead. Like instead of planting a tree, you plant a solar panel.
Yeah, but those trees, it's like maize or wheat or whatever. It shall not be planted in such an industrial way as well. So basically, and you remember the big fires we had 3 years back? It was just because it's not a forest. It's large open fields of pine trees that are planted one after another. And of course, cutting that for putting large-scale solar farms is not the solution, but this kind of agriculture is not the solution as well. So difficult answer to a more global problematic of the proper usage of land. But definitely, and there are some solutions for agrivoltaics, like putting PV panels on top of agricultural activities or adding activities is a proper solution, but yet at small scale. But still, we need to decarbonize a little, even though a French mix is not very carbonized. And it's a business. So basically, there are huge developers, Total and EDF being the largest, or I believe one of the largest solar developers in France. It's proper business. You develop, so it's like building housing development. You select a land, you get a permitting, you cut the trees if there are trees, or you put panel on top of something, and then you get your contract. It's just project finance and the business. There is not really a sense of carbon reduction or whatever. It's just using the industry and the state of the world as it is for doing something that is, of course, better than gas or fuel power plants that are still widely spread in Africa, for example. But obviously, if it was only me, I would really much focus on reducing our consumption than adding new production capacity, even the renewable.
That's really super inspiring. And I love when business people say the first thing we need to do is to reduce, and then we can think and we can have a proper conversation, because that's totally the challenge, right? That some parts of the world and some of us do overconsume, whereas some of us do underconsume, and we need to strike a balance within this. And not only the CO2, but that will be also related to food, clothing, etc. So that's all the things that matter. And indeed, I guess that you want more time to go surfing. So that's a very important point. But we're reaching the end of our recording. So Thomas, I would like to hear from you what you think will be your next step as yourself, as Moon, as Sunna Design. Where can we expect to see you in the coming months or years?
Oh, no surprise. We will continue just as we do. Keep pushing and keep spreading the good vibe and solar energy to any places. No change ahead. Just a lot of continuation.
Good surfing then. Good surfing on the solar wave. Have you ever made a solar panel as the shape of a surfboard?
Mm-mm.
Let's think about it. That would be in the next way to appeal
Let's
for
not
to
mix
more.
patience.
Thank you so much. It's been such an enlightening conversation. And it's true that you are quite a ray of sunshine in the energy sector. I've rarely met someone so optimistic and so really passionate about just plugging people to electricity. So thank you so much. We need more people like you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Energetic. It's been a pleasure diving deep into the world of sustainability and the just energy transition with some of the most forward-thinking mouths out there. I'm Maureen Cornelis, your host from policy consultancy Next Energy Consumer, and it's been an incredible journey growing this podcast together with you, our knowledgeable and passionate listeners. Since 2021, we've shared countless stories, insights, and ideas over more than 40 episodes, and it's all thanks to your support and enthusiasm. If you enjoyed our journey so far and want to help us keep the conversation going, why not support us on Patreon? Every bit helps us bring more inspiring content your way. Check out the show notes for the link. And hey, if you're a part of an organization that shares our passion for a sustainable and inclusive energy future, we're excited to explore sponsorship opportunities with you. It's a fantastic way to connect with a dedicated audience and make an even bigger impact together. Shout out to the fantastic Igor Mikhailovich from Podcast Media Factory for his incredible sound design work, making every episode a joy to listen to. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Energetic on your favorite podcast platform. And if you think a friend or a colleague could benefit from our episode, we'd love for you to spread the word. It helps us grow and keep the energy transition conversation alive. Sharing is caring. Follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to stay engaged and update on all things energetic. Thanks once again for lending your ears. Until next time.